And welcome back to Mortgage Talk with Mark, where every week our goal is to bring on some guests that will help you make better decisions in your life, in your real estate, your investments, or your business. And I'm really excited today to have on not only a good friend of mine, but also my business coach. And he lives in Dallas. And Phil, his company is M1 Academy. He'll introduce himself in just a second. And he has helped me immensely over the last couple of years in working with me and really my mindset around business. You know what it takes to set goals and to achieve goals and to think positively and get past hurdles. And it was really strange. I haven't even told you this, Phil, yet, but I had a dream about this last night, this podcast, which has never happened to me. I've probably had 100 of these shows, and I've never dreamed the night before about it. So anyway, I want you to introduce yourself, and let's get into the heart of it, because we've only got about 25 minutes. We could talk for hours, but let's get
Yes.
started.
Yeah, no, in short, 30,000 foot view. My name is Phil Treadwell. Been in mortgage and real estate, sales and marketing side of that business for 22 years. Was an originator, branch manager, area regional VP, national director, all the things. Have a passion for podcasting, have a podcast for the industry as well. And for the last 3 years, I've been coaching mortgage and real estate professionals. And it wasn't anything that I had really planned on doing or anticipated, but almost every professional success that I've ever had, I can directly tie to a coach, a mentor, someone kind of taking their experience and imparting it to me in wisdom. And through a series of events, ended up starting some workshops and turning into a coaching business practice, if you will. So I do a lot with individuals and companies and larger groups and things of that nature. But really, my mission and passion is to help driven people overcome obstacles and maximize results.
I love that.
So that's essentially what I do, and having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, well, you're very good at it too. And so
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Everything we're going to kind of talk about today, I've either heard you talk about or we've been in conversation about. So let's get started around and tell us a little bit about M1 Academy real quick. I mean, where the name came from, what it means, what sort of about the mission, if you will.
Sure. M1 Academy, the M1 stands for mindset first. And mindset's not the only thing that's going to make someone successful, but it is the most important thing, because our mindset controls our attitude and our actions, which are the only things that we can control.
Mm-hmm.
We can't control the market. We can't control our sphere of influence. We can't control our business partners. But what we can control are the things that we do and how we respond to the things that happen to us. Right. And so mindset's a big part of this. Whenever I first started this and was doing some workshops, they were very tactical. Here's the sales and marketing playbook. And people were getting results, but not at the level that I felt like they should, being that we had this playbook kind of laid out for them. And really, my coach and mentor at the time said, you're underestimating some of the intangibles. You're underestimating the mindset and some of these foundational elements of understanding why you do what you do. How does that create your unique value offer in your marketing, your messaging? You're underestimating having a North Star and those milestones and those goals and habits. And so that's really the genesis of where it came from. And I think it's been very impactful in kind of setting us apart from, some other companies that are just like, okay, here's the 7 steps to success, or here's the 5 things you need to do.
Right. Yeah. Work your database, blah, blah, blah. But it takes something to overcome some of those fears, So let's start with some of the more common mindset blocks that you see in small business people. I know you don't just work with small business people, but in general, what holds people back from achieving those goals?
That's a great question. There's really 2 things that hold people back from taking action. And the first is fear, right? Fear of failure. And this is one of my favorite topics to talk about, because we were taught in school, we were taught growing up that failure and success were opposites. Right? In school, you couldn't fail every test, fail every quiz. Even if you learned what you got wrong in that academia world, you're still a quote unquote failure. And so we were taught that, success is on one side and failure is on the other, and you have to make a conscious decision which way you want to go. But in the real world, we hear it on stage from people that are very successful or have had a lot of results. We hear it in podcasts, we hear it in books. Failure and success are actually stacked. We go through failure to get to success, because there's never a situation where doing nothing or not taking action is better than doing something, even if you fail. Because if you do nothing, you get nothing. But if you do something, you have an opportunity to get a win or get a result, or maybe you take that loss. But that L in loss is actually L for learn. You get to learn something that can potentially propel you forward. So the
Mm.
opposite of failure is not success. The opposite of failure is excuses. And we
Yeah.
have a ton of excuses about why we don't take
You call
action. And I
it
think,
you call it what do you call it? XQIs or something like that?
yeah, it's so that there's a book called The Magic of Thinking Big, and there's
Yeah.
3 failure diseases that it talks about there. There's detailitis, excuseitis, and procrastination. And we all fail, or we all suffer from one of those 3 failure diseases, and we get in our own head. We overthink it. And so I
Mhm.
think the other thing that really holds us back is, what are people going to think? Right? If I go and try something new, or if I do fail, because a lot of people may not necessarily be fear failure itself, but they might fear people seeing them fail.
Yeah.
And we
Good
have to
point.
remember, listen, they don't pay our bills. They
Right.
don't live our life. They don't have our relationships with our family. They're not in our spiritual walk. So how do I go out and realize that this spotlight that I think is on me isn't, because a lot of people are too busy thinking the spotlight's on them. And so we just have to get out of our own head and realize that everything we want is on the other side of that fear.
Mm.
Everything we want will happen through action, through going out and doing the things. I call them daily habits, daily disciplines, our non-negotiables. We've got to wake up every day with intentionality and start doing those things. We've got to intentionally take action spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, and then, yes, in our business financially.
Sure. Yeah, there's an old saying about, you have to get used to being uncomfortable, to extend yourself out there a little bit and move past that fear. Now, my experience over the years is that's good information until the market shifts, And right
Yeah.
now, being in the mortgage space, it's tough out there. So let's talk about those daily habits. What would you recommend for me or anybody else who's whether it be the real estate or mortgage or any small business in this weird sort of strange economy we're in to move toward those goals faster?
That's another great question. We list them as F5. There's
Okay.
5 Fs: faith, family and friends, finance, fitness, and focus. And another way to think about it is just what I said a second ago: spiritual, mental, physical, emotional, financial. We all need to come up with 1 or 2, maybe 3 activities, actual action habits that we can do on a daily basis. So a lot of those can get knocked out in some type of a morning routine.
Okay.
There was about a year and a half, 2 years, I was waking up at 4:30, 4:45 every single morning. And I still wake up pretty early, just not quite that early, but I still have that morning routine. And what people need to understand is that our mind, from a mindset perspective, only distinguishes between wins and losses, but not
Mm.
how big they are. So when we go out with our daily habits and we get up a little bit early, maybe we go to the gym or take some quiet time, or we read a book, get in the word, listen to a podcast, we're taking care of ourselves spiritually and mentally. And again, if we do a workout, go for a walk, whatever, then we're taking care of ourselves physically, and we're able to check those boxes off. Those boxes are essentially small wins.
Mm.
And there's a really good book by James Clear called Atomic Habits, where he talks about stacking habits. The way I like to frame it is, we're stacking wins. Since our mind only distinguishes between wins and losses, if we wake up and knock a bunch of these daily habits out, we've been stacking wins, and that creates momentum. Anytime we check things off of a list, we want to check more things off of a list. That momentum creates more motivation. And
Yeah.
the other thing that it creates is confidence.
Yeah.
Those people that have massive confidence, it's not because they were born that way. Confidence isn't a personality trait. Confidence is a skill that we learn, and we learn that through doing all those little activities and realizing that that's moving the needle in my life. That's
Mhm.
moving the needle in my business way more than the losses do. So if we go through that routine, we knock out some habits, maybe drink a protein shake instead of eating a donut. Right.
Yeah.
We reach out to a handful of friends and family to reconnect. We do those things, those habits in our business. What happens is, then if we we have a call or a meeting that, man, it just goes terrible, we just bomb it, or our mind's like, okay, well, that was a loss, but this morning I took some quiet time, that's a win. They cancel each other out, and you still have momentum.
Mhm.
So tactically, we've got to take action in our business. We have to take action in our life. But the way that we trick our mind is to realize that that momentum comes from celebrating those little wins. We focus too much on the things we didn't get done, or the
Yeah.
things that we did wrong. And that's not how it works. We have to focus on the habits that we did do things right, and not the level or the size of it.
Yeah, and I follow a guy on social media named Jordan Peterson who's been around for a long time, and
Yeah.
one of Jordan Peterson's saying is, "First thing to do in your morning is make your bed."
Yes.
Start with something small that you accomplish to get you started to the next thing, and I love that.
Yeah.
And then I also, I've worked with Phil Jones quite a bit, who wrote a book called Exactly What to Say, and I love that book. It's a communication book, and he talks about these 4 letters, LB and NT. At the end of the day, look back at your day, or even after this podcast, I may LB and NT. It says, what did I like best about it? And next time, what would I have done differently? You know, so I'm not saying that if you have a failure in your life, whatever, a call didn't go well, or you lost a client, don't take it personally. Just kind of look at it from a third party and say, what would I do differently next time? What can I have learned from that?
That's
And
exactly
so,
right. It's about having self-awareness. That's kind of how I frame it. Self-awareness isn't about being critical of ourselves. It's not about being punitive. Self-awareness is understanding, what are my takeaways that, hey, I did really well on that, and where are some ways that I can improve?
mhm,
And a very close pairing with this topic is around feelings and our emotions. So we feel a certain way. Feelings are simply feedback.
mhm.
Feelings are not necessarily truth,
Yeah,
right? It doesn't mean that they're not true, but it doesn't automatically mean they're true just because we feel a certain way. Feelings are feedback. It's about a need being met or a need not being met. So happiness, joy, excitement. A need was met, right? Frustration, anger, jealousy, resentment. That's about a need not being met.
yeah,
So when we feel a certain way, if we'll have some self-awareness to understand, what is my takeaway here, almost in an academic sense, what is the takeaway of a need that wasn't met, or what is it about this feeling that I can use it to readjust, then all of a sudden we can go to our more logical decision making mind and move forward. So just to your point, we may feel a certain way about how something went, but if we sat down and really had that self-awareness and made the assessment, and again, not judgment but assessment, we can really learn a lot of things about ourselves. And a quick, easy example was my very first podcast episode. It was very telling. I'd never heard myself for 30 or 40 minutes on a recording. And I had a really high profile guest, and it was really big in the mortgage industry and still is. And I had on my list of questions. So I asked him a question. He gave me great answers, great feedback. And I said, fantastic. And then I read the next question, and he got done, and I said, fantastic. Well, I don't ever remember using that as a segue before, but I had to really sit and look and realize I'm not very good at this, and I need to really hone in. How can I have conversations with people, create segues, and not just say the word fantastic? So self-awareness is very important.
fantastic, Bill.
Appreciate it.
I love that. So I want you to coach me up just for a second, because it's not just me, but one of the things I have to really look at my own business is by follow through, with clients, or follow up. It could be current clients after closing or whatever. And why do most small business owners struggle with that? Would you think?
There's a variety of reasons. The two that come to mind first is we focus too much on being busy, not productive.
Yeah.
And I coach a lot of people on really time management and productivity. And a really easy exercise is everyone should time track their day in
Mm,
30-minute increments for about 3 or 4 days, maybe 5 days. And everything you did just in 30-minute increments, just put it on some type of an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, we have a time tracker in our coaching program, and you want to go through it for 3 or 4 or 5 days. And then you want to go back and use green light, yellow light, red light. Green light activities are what are income producing or revenue generating activities that only I could do.
yeah.
Yellow light is what are income producing activities that someone else could have done, or maybe they're more long-term, revenue generating things. And then red light is, hey, this was either wasted time on my business or this isn't moving the needle at all. So after we time track for 3 or 4 or 5 days and then apply that red light, yellow light, green light, all of a sudden we realize we're not being as productive in our business as we think we are. And so a lot of times we get distracted with all these other things.
Hmm.
The other reason that people don't necessarily follow up like they should is that's not necessarily fun. We
Right.
want to do things that we feel like we get some, again, that dopamine release,
It's
some type of,
exciting.
hey,
It's
this was really
exciting when you do
worthwhile.
this. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Exactly. But what we have to remember is in every single business, any type of sales, right? Any type of marketing, 80% of sales come after 5 touches.
Yep.
So 6 or more is where 80% of sales come from. So follow-up is extremely important. Now, a touch doesn't have to be a full 20 or 30-minute conversation. It could be a social media post that they see, a text message that you sent,
Yeah.
seeing them out in public somewhere and shaking their hand. But we have to follow up because most people give up after 2 or 3 times. And really, we need a lot more than that to get people to develop that trust with us, that what they want to engage in whatever our business practice is.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. That speaks to me because that's exactly the whole green light thing really speaks to me too.
Yeah.
Focus most of your days, but most you can on that because I get busy. There's a lot of busy work and you think you're being productive and you're not. I say, I'm not,
Absolutely. That's
you
the
know.
biggest trap people fall into.
So when we're speaking about these habits and these daily routines, if you will, moving towards something, let's talk about goals and the value of goals. It
Yeah.
could be a weight loss goal. It could be, I just had surgery Friday. I've got to make some changes in my lifestyle. So those are goals that sort of been forced on me, if you will. But let's say we want production goals and business goals. Talk about, what that looks like. What are we moving toward?
Yeah.
And everybody's different, but talk about the value of goal setting.
I love this topic as well. 93% of people do not achieve the goals that they set for themselves in a given year. 93% of people don't achieve their goals. I'm one of the statistics as well. But the 2 reasons that people don't achieve their goals, the first one is clarity. We're not clear enough about what our goal is. So, you just talked about health and fitness. A lot of people are like, hey, I want to get fit this year, or I want to lose weight. Well, what does that mean if you want to get fit? Is that losing pounds? Is that losing inches? Is that losing body fat? Is it BMI? Do you want a 6-pack? Like what is that thing? And same with losing weight. It has to be very specific and measurable. Too often we make goals subjective as opposed to objective. A goal needs to have a very specific, did it happen or not? And we need to have a specific date, because a goal without a date is just a dream.
Yeah.
So that's the first step of this. The second reason we don't achieve our goals is we just don't want it bad enough. We set arbitrary goals that we think we're supposed to set, or this is what I should want next, but we don't tie it to something we want really, really badly. And so the way that we come up with the things that we want is, as I coach on a North Star, that North Star is that ideal version of us. I heard a quote one time that the definition of hell is meeting the person that you might have become. and that really resonated with me. I'm like, heck with that.
Yeah.
Let's figure out who that person is.
Right.
Let's think about, what do they look like? What do they feel like? What are their relationships like? What's their spiritual life like? What's their financial life like? And then reverse engineer it and think about some big milestones that you need to do to get to that place. And then you have a starting point. And those are your initial goals. And so what happens is when we wake up every day and think about our habits and the calendar appointments we have, we don't take action, not because we're not capable, it's because we're not willing. We have to think about it in 2 categories, capable and willing. And I think about that when I hire employees. We talk about that in team building. We just talk about that within ourselves. Most of us are capable of what we want to do. We're just not willing. And the willingness comes from, it has to be something that you want, want really badly. And the good news is we get to choose it. So our goals almost turns into like this tough conversation, or they become a dirty word, when really it's about set a goal that you want. And a lot of times, and this is the last thing I'll say here, we think it has to be a really high moral ground, that it has to be something where there's this overarching good that we're doing, or this helping people thing. Almost everybody that I talk to in mortgage and real estate about what their why is, or even small business owners, is I want to help people. Yeah. That's awesome. But whenever on a day-to-day basis, when you get frustrated, when you get stuck, whenever you just don't feel like it, helping people isn't probably enough of a burning desire to go out and take action and do the things we need to do. So sometimes it can be a tangible object. Maybe you want to get a nicer car. Maybe you want to take your family on vacation. It can be, hey, I want to retire my spouse or pay my parents' house off. Sure. But some of the most effective little sprints, 90, 120 days, 6-month sprints that I've seen people do are because someone wanted a nice watch or they wanted a handbag. Right. But the cool part about it is you have to get those things out of abundance. And the way that you get that abundance is by going and doing more work. So if you've got to find a little trinket or some material thing to get you to go take action because you really want that thing,
Sure.
and the business that you're doing, the overarching why is to help people, well, then it's okay to have something that you want to chase because it gets you to take action, and that action is in turn helping people. So sometimes we just have to re-engineer it in our mind that those really big, you know, pretty sounding things that we're trying to achieve. And that's great. It's not that we're disingenuous, but we
Sure.
also have to have something on a day-to-day basis to get us to go do the things we need to do.
Yeah. Or you could be like me and go buy a new Ram 1500 and then go, what motivates you? You know what I'm saying?
Unfortunately, that's how I've been too, is like, okay, well, I'm going to go get this thing. And now I have no
Now I'm
choice but to go
motivated.
do the work.
Now, as you probably know, I've been in the mortgage space for 40 years, so I'm not going anywhere. But there are a lot of people who are in a position now they have to shift, or pivot in maybe in a career. Um, and there's always this idea of don't quit, don't quit, don't quit. How do you coach people or help people discern when maybe it's time to make a shift, maybe change industries or whatever? Do you help people on that level too?
I do. And typically the things that I help with is a time for a change of company.
Yeah,
Is it time to, change the model or the focus within their business? But the only way that I can really talk about this is to talk from my experience, because there's been different jobs, different businesses, different things that I've done that I was all in, and I was 100% focused, and this is my thing. And what I realized is it turns for me into a spiritual issue. Sometimes God takes us to a place and wants us to go down a road because he wants to equip us, or he wants to bring us to some place spiritually. And it wasn't that we were supposed to achieve that goal. It wasn't that we were supposed to get to the end of that road, but there was something along the way in pursuing that, in that process, that we needed to get from it. And then it was time to pivot. And,
mm,
you even think about, uh, David's passion in life was to build the temple, but he needed to be brought to a place spiritually. God wanted him to want to go build the temple, but it wasn't for him to do. That was for his son to do. And
yeah,
so there's things like that. There's a really good book that I read by one of my former pastors called Finding the Favor of God, because there's not a lot of books on favor. And it talked about this story in there. And that's always resonated with me, because regardless of what someone believes, whether they're a believer or not, we have to understand that things happen for a reason. And
sure.
so sometimes we're supposed to go all in down a path. We're supposed to go all in down a road, but there's something else in store. There's something we have to learn. There's a place that we have to get brought to in our mindset, in our emotions, in our spiritual life. And then once we've gotten that thing, it's okay to pivot. And that was always the litmus test for me. If I know this isn't the road I'm supposed to be on, then I look back, okay, what did I get from this? What did I learn?
Yeah,
Now, these
yeah,
things may have been equipping me for this other path.
yeah. I love that. So it's a lot of times it's the intuition or the ability to pray into it or to listen to the Holy Spirit for direction. You know,
Yeah.
because sometimes I've been on my knees where I didn't know what I was going to do. And then there was a sign to do something, and that's been a big part of my journey too. And it's scary sometimes, but it's always played out in what I call grace. And so that's a little bit different conversation than business per se, but it can be in anything, in business part of that, because right now it's fairly scary times out there,
It is.
financially for a lot of
It
people.
is. And I think people, a lot of times we get caught up in the fear and what's not working for us, that we miss the opportunities, right? We're on our knees, we're begging and pleading for a certain thing to happen, and we don't hear anything. And it's because that's not the thing. We need to be looking elsewhere. Or sometimes we keep praying for the same thing over and over, and we've already been given the answer, right? But we
Mhm.
didn't hear
Yeah.
it, or
We
we
didn't
weren't
hear it.
listening, or we didn't like that answer. And
Right.
so those are from a discerning standpoint that you're talking about. I think that's massively important, that we go back and have that self-awareness and realize that in every difficult market, in every challenging time in our life, in everything that happens, there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity to grow and
Right.
learn,
That's
but
right.
there's also very tangible opportunities in the mortgage and real estate market. Yes, it's difficult, but there are so many massive opportunities out there right now for people to create wealth with real estate.
That's
Our
right.
text community, I don't know if the text went out or if we scheduled it for later this week, we have a text going out that shows, according to the Federal Reserve, homeowners have 40 times the net worth on average to a renter.
Yeah.
Well, that's the challenge and problem that most people have in their lives is the financial side of things. Well, we can go solve that problem for people. There's other types of opportunities, even with higher interest rates. Well, yes, mortgage rates are higher than they have been over the last few years, but not historically. But consumer interest rates have massively outpaced mortgage interest rates. And people are sitting on the most equity on average of any time in history, where
Right.
you could lower someone's monthly outgo by $1,500, $1,000 a month by consolidating some of that consumer debt.
Sure.
Yes, you're refinancing your mortgage to a higher rate, but you're saving money on a monthly basis that you can then throw back at your mortgage and pay them off a lot faster. So
Exactly.
there's lots of opportunities. And I think that's in those times of desperation or those times of survival mode, we really have to try to scope out as much as possible and say, okay, what is it I'm supposed to learn here? Or where's the opportunity that I can really go make something of this situation?
Yeah, that's great. We've only got about a minute and a half. So let's wrap this up with one or two pieces of advice you give small business owners in 2025 that may help them achieve their goals or get out of their own way, if you will.
Yeah, two quick things. One, the gap between where you are and where you want to be is nothing more than a decision. And I heard a quote by Tony Robbins one time that said, you've not truly made a decision unless it creates new action. So if you have a different place you want to be in your life, your business, it starts with the decision. And as soon as you make the decision, you have to go take action. And the second thing I would say is that success is about consistent and persistent effort over time.
Yeah.
We know what it means to be consistent, but staying persistent is being consistent, whether you get results or not. Sometimes we stay consistent, but it doesn't work out and we stop, or we get results and stop, but we have to stay persistent over time. And that's really what's going to move the needle for people is we give up, right? The book, 3 feet from gold, 6 feet from gold, whatever the title of the book is, you can't give up. And most people give up right before their breakthrough.
I love it. I love it. Really enjoyed this conversation, Phil. I knew I would. I even dreamed about it last night, So I don't care what you say. This is fantastic. Okay.
I love it. I appreciate you, Mark. This has been a lot of fun having this conversation with you.
We could keep talking for several hours, but I've got to wrap this up. And I appreciate it again, you being on, and we'll talk soon.